The Football Kickoff.
With Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Yeah, welcome along to the Football Kickoff with Sky on Phil Egan. It's where you can get all the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. Delighted to welcome to the show Damien Delaney. Colm Boohig is in studio with me as well. Before I get to you lads, flash poll, who's going to win the Premier League? Final day on Sunday, Manchester City in the box seat. 66.4% think City will finish the job off. 33.6% think Liverpool will be lifting the Premier League title on Sunday afternoon. Will there be a pitch invasion? Let's talk about pitch invasions and what happened last night. Damien, how are you?
Good, yeah, morning lads.
Hi Damien.
What do you think of last night? Obviously your former club Palace 2-0 up at half time. You're thinking Everton are in serious trouble here, and they pulled it out of the bag.
Yeah, I just read a stat there this morning. It's the first time Everton have ever come from behind to win a Premier League game. Not ever, but this season I think. Look, I'm actually pretty pleased that Everton have stayed up. You know, I would have been disappointed. I'm not an Everton fan, but you know, I think Everton are such a staple of the Premier League. They always bring something every season. You know, they spend money. They've got a great bunch of fans. Goodison Park is a wonderful place to go. They have a new stadium in the pipeline. It would have been a travesty if Everton would have went down. So I'm glad they've done it. Obviously, Crystal Palace being 2-0 up, it must have looked pretty grim. Frank Lampard, you know, a penny for his thoughts would have been outrageous once they went 2-0 down. But they managed to pull it out, and they're playing Premier League football next season. The pitch invasion stuff, not so keen on really, especially what we saw with Billy Sharp the night before. You know, a lot of fans have been drinking, they're amped up on adrenaline. You know, some people just get carried away, but it is a small minority. So I think that's something that's going to need to be looked at seriously, because you know, you can only imagine what was said to Patrick Vieira last night when you see that incident. Mind you, he didn't look flustered striding across the pitch with all those fans running around him. He was a brave man that decided yeah, exactly. He was a brave man that went after him. But look, I'm pretty sure that'll be looked at and clamped down on very, very soon.
Roy Keane was somewhere secretly delighted with Patrick Vieira.
Yeah.
Finally agreed on something.
Yeah, and in fairness, I think that the Everton fan that kind of ushered him off the pitch deserve credit for actually saying, right, this is Patrick Vieira, get him off the pitch, because, you know, this is all about Everton now. Get the Crystal Palace manager off the pitch. We kind of saw the good and bad column of pitch invasions, where after that incident, which by the way the FA are investigating Vieira for, so he's going to be in trouble for that because he retaliated and he should know better. But we don't know what was said to him, but the fact that he turned back, something obviously got his goat, and he just said, right, I'm not taking this. But then at the end you see Frank Lampard looking out at all those fans on the pitch, and there's a real connection there now with Lampard and Everton.
100%. And like, if you even look at the online reaction, which I know is only a small portion of the overall fan base, but since day one, since that first Newcastle United match at St James's Park, when Everton were having negative results, the fans have really backed him, because they kind of back his energy and attitude. And I suppose calling out the players, which, you know, the players won't like themselves, like Damien, maybe he'll give us insight into that, but you know, they might not like getting called out, but the fans like it, and you know, they saw it as about time. I think Lampard's done very, very well these last few weeks. I know he had a negative result against Brentford, but wins against Manchester United and Chelsea and away to Leicester, he's done very, very well. And I couldn't help but be fairly pleased for him, because he gets a lot of criticism. I think he's an easy target as a manager, and he's done very well because he came into a difficult situation, he's had tough times, and that pitch invasion yesterday was, you know, it was a sight to behold. I'm not sure they should be celebrating just staying up with a squad like that, but it was a great sight to see. Yeah,
like it's euphoria. I think, Damien, they're getting a lot of stick, Everton fans, because they're celebrating this, but it's the moment that they realise, look, they're after getting themselves out of a very, very tough situation, which they should never have been in, but they were. And a few weeks ago it looked pretty ominous for them, and even at half time last night you started thinking maybe they could go, because one of the two teams near them could win on Sunday and Everton be relegated, but they got themselves out. So what happens now? We still don't know how good is Frank Lampard, and actually the fact that they were playing Crystal Palace, you know, in another world, Lampard is in charge of Palace. He was linked with that Palace job before Vieira took it, but you kind of feel the Everton fans rallied behind the team, the players, Lampard, but now the post-mortem start, and now they'll start pointing fingers.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I just want to the initial point there. I don't think they're celebrating anything last night. It's more relief.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't imagine the pressure that the fans have been under. I mean, a lot of fans, you know, they live for their football clubs. Just, you're talking sleepless nights, you know, arguments at pubs with friends. I mean, the tension must have been sky high. So that, what you saw last night is just a release of all of that. I don't necessarily think that they're going to have a commemorative DVD made or anything like that. You know,
They might.
They might. Yeah, I don't think they will. But look, that's more relief. But your next point, I think that the Everton fans, my own personal opinion, I think they rallied behind the football club because they realised that, you know, turning on Frank Lampard wasn't going to do any good. I think Frank Lampard is under enormous pressure next season. I think first 5, 6, 7 games, if it doesn't go well, I think that he could be in trouble. You know, he stayed up this year by the skin of his teeth. He did well, but realistically, that squad should never have been anywhere near where it was. He's calling out players, which, you know, from a player's point of view, you know, they might have certain issues with how the manager's going about his job. You know, they might be in training saying, well, we don't like certain things, or we don't think the tactics are quite good, or we think the team selection is great. So it can get very, very nasty that when players and managers kind of get off the same page. But I think Frank Lampard's under pressure still. You know, obviously he's not going to get sacked now because he stayed them up and they're going to all go away and have a holiday. But once this euphoria dies down, they're going to come back pre-season and the spotlight is going to be on him straight away. Because like you said, Frank's track record as a manager from Derby to Chelsea is patchy. He's done reasonably well, but he's not actually established himself as a manager. And I think he would admit that as well, that he's not an established elite manager just yet. He still has to do something to get him into that bracket. And I think the situation he found himself at Everton is partly his doing. You know, a lot of managers could have come in there and got them out of trouble where it wasn't even a question on the second last game of the season. So, you know, I agree Frank Lampard has done okay.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's in the clear just yet.
Damien, in hindsight, can you see the thinking behind the signings of Dele Alli and Donny van de Beek, considering the lack of impact they've had throughout the second half of the season?
See, I suppose you can get to see because Frank Lampard is probably optimistic, thinking I can rekindle Dele Alli's love for football. Now, a lot of managers try that at Spurs, and a lot of them wash their hands of him very, very quickly. There's no doubt that Dele Alli was a world-class midfield player. I'd say nearly 5 years ago now,
yeah,
at least 4 years ago. But whatever happens in his life, maybe he's fallen in love with football, he doesn't get it anymore. It's very, very hard to rekindle that. It takes a special player-manager relationship, and obviously Frank thought he could get something out of him. The Van de Beek one, I thought, you know, it made sense for me. You know, he's obviously a very technically gifted midfield player, can create goals, can score goals, but obviously he's had a really poor run, and bringing those two players into the situations that are Everton are awkward, because the club's in the doldrums and players who are in the doldrums are coming into that situation that are kind of, you know, don't rub up well together. You kind of want Dele Alli to go into a really good situation, a club that's like bouncing along, you know, and they come in and they kind of get on board with that. So I can see the sense in it because it didn't cost any money and they can get rid of both of them at the end of the season. Am I right in saying that? I don't think Dele Alli is permanent, or is it?
No, Dele's permanent. Yeah, Dele is permanent, but Van de Beek can go back to United.
I thought with Dele Alli, the fee depended on how many games he played, so they haven't got anywhere near the amount of games that he was meant to play, because he's barely played. I mean, I was surprised, to be honest, when they brought him on at half time. The only reason I'd say they brought him on was Andre Gomez was having an absolute stinker.
I'm surprised he played and Alan didn't. Well, Alan seems to have not recovered from that montage. But even in a game of that importance, you'd think you put him in.
Just on your former club, Damien, Palace, obviously we didn't really know what to expect from Vieira taking over Roy Hodgson, trying to change things up. They had their moments, they had some good performances this season, and obviously Wilfried Zaha was an important part of that, but it sounds like he's looking to get out of there, not for the first time. He's got a year left on his contract.
Yeah. Look, I think that Wilf handed in a transfer request as well at one point, and he's made his feelings known that he does want to leave. But obviously nobody's met the valuation of the football club, so he's still there. Whether or not he goes, maybe the club think that with a year to run his contract, they've gotten everything they can get out of him. I think Wilf is 30 now. I think I'm right.
He'll be 30 in November.
Yeah, so I mean he's kind of getting to that age bracket, and the thing about Wilfried is he's been playing first team football since he was 16. That's he's had 14 years of professional football, and if you look at his injury record, it's been really, really good. So you'd wonder, there's an awful lot of miles on the clock there with him, and perhaps the club are looking at it and thinking, how much more can we get out of him? Is he going to be worth a new contract? You'd have to make him the highest paid player again. Or are they happy with Eze and Olise? Because I think that's why those two players were signed. Eberechi Eze has been fabulous. Again, had his injury problems, but there you've got two wingers that could easily come in and fill the void left by Wilfried. And I think that's one of the key things that Vieira has done, is he's kind of took away the over-dependence on Wilfried, because for so long it was just all about, everyone else keep a clean sheet, and hopefully Wilfried can do his stuff to create goals and score goals, and he'll get us where we need to be. And I think that was kind of the model that Roy Hodgson had. He just said, we've got a really top class player here who can cause trouble and score goals and get us to where we need to be. But I think Vieira's moved away from that now. He definitely does not want to be dependent or over-dependent on Wilfried, so that he's done brilliant in that regard. And I just think that maybe the timing is right from my point of view, that if Wilfried feels he wants to go, it's been a long saga for a number of years, and like I said, he's 30 now, and if the club can recoup some sort of money from this summer, I wouldn't be too disappointed, no.
Where could you see him going?
Well, there's talk of a move abroad. I know there was a talk of move abroad, because he's always, to me, you know him, Damien, like the talent has always been there. And funny you mentioned the amount of games he's played. Think about the amount of kicks he's got throughout his career. I find sometimes with him that gets him so wound up that he loses focus during games because he's getting kicked, whereas we know all the talent is there. But he's approaching 30 now, and is he going to get to a stage in a few years and think, I could have got more out of it?
Possibly. I think he definitely has top four talent. He definitely has the ability to have played in a higher level. He definitely did. There was a period there where he was unplayable. But I think an awful lot of what you say about his temperament is what makes Wilfried. There's a lot of times where he gets antagonised and he bites, and games aren't going well, and all of a sudden Wilfried kind of flips into beast mode and just gets so irate that he can take a game by the scruff of the neck. Equally, he can lose his temper and turn a whole stadium. I've played in away stadiums with him that sometimes when, the game's going well for us and the opposition fans seem to be more interested in getting after their own team, and we're winning the game and everything's going nice and the focus isn't really on us. And then all of a sudden Wilfried has one of his moments and he unites the whole stadium, and next thing all of a sudden now, they're baying for blood and the home team obviously think, oh, well, hang on a minute, they're not kind of out us anymore. So it kind of works both ways with him. Yeah. But I think all those great qualities that he has, I suppose that is one of his qualities that he just can't seem to master, or he doesn't want to master, because he feels that it is what makes him him.
Yeah, love watching him play. While that game was going on last night, Colm, you were watching a bit of Villa and Burnley.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
And are you any better after watching it, or was it?
Oh, I was actually texting you to break the fourth wall. Now I was texting Phil, being like, "What channel is the Everton game on?" Because I was kind of tuning in and out of this Damien Villa Burnley. It just kind of Villa have had a very kind of underwhelming end to the season. I think
saving themselves for Sunday.
I think Gerrard's done an okay job. Impressed that he got Coutinho into the club and then got him permanently last week for 17 million, pretty cheap in this day and age. But I think they've only won 2 of their last 11. And they're just kind of sputtering out to the end of the season. But I was pleased for Burnley. If I had a choice now between, there's 2 left, I would like Leeds to stay up. I'd love Leeds to stay up. I wouldn't be absolutely heartbroken if Burnley went. They've had a long stint in the Premier League. Don't particularly enjoy watching their games, but they're very, very good at what they do. And Mike Jackson's done a terrific job. So I can't help but be pleased for them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we'll get into what Burnley have ahead of them on Sunday, and when we look at some of the fixtures. Remember, you're listening to the Football Kickoff with Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. I mentioned at the start of the show who's going to win the Premier League title, and most people leaning towards Manchester City for obvious reasons. Damien, they play Villa on Sunday. I think a few Liverpool fans looked at that Villa team sheet last night and thought, no Coutinho, maybe he's going to start on Sunday. But there's such a narrative around this, obviously, given who Steven Gerrard manages, who Steven Gerrard is, and the fact that they're playing Manchester City. But is there anything that you can see that would suggest Villa can cause an upset here on Sunday?
Absolutely not. I think it's as close to a foregone conclusion. Really, I can't see, especially being at Manchester City. I suppose the other subplot going on is Jack Grealish will win a Premier League title playing against his former club. But Manchester City have really taken that defeat to Real Madrid in a positive way. They came out the gates screaming, scored a number of goals. Granted, they had a poor half against West Ham, but they managed to rally and get themselves in a position. But I think that the motivation for these guys, last game of a very, very long season, and it's in their own hands. I would be flabbergasted if I saw anything other than a comprehensive Manchester City win. And obviously you've got to take the opposition into account. I've worked an awful lot of the Villa games the back half of the season. I mean, they really have petered out. It's just kind of gone all flat at Aston Villa. There seems to be no energy in that team. They're relying on their talent to get them results, and they've got some seriously talented teams. But a lot of their performances have been a bit disjointed. A lot of the players look, pretty disinterested, might be too harsh a word, but they don't look like they're chomping at the bit and really pressing. When we first saw Gerrard going into Aston Villa, we saw him, really high energy team. I watched their game against Norwich, or I worked their game against Norwich there a couple of weeks ago. Couldn't believe how low they were, and how disinterested is probably too strong a word, but I mean, how the lack of interest that they had in the game. And as I said, they just rely on the talent. Took Danny Ings coming off the bench to turn that game. And Manchester City in free flow with a prize of the magnitude that awaits them. I can't see them putting up much of a fight.
Damien, is Gerrard as under pressure as Lampard is at the start of next season, in your view?
No, I would have thought so. I think, Villa have kind of finished mid-table, and I think that's just about keeps Gerrard out of trouble.
Right.
But again, like every Premier League manager starting next season after 10 games are under pressure, because if Steven Gerrard doesn't right the wrongs that he's seen this season, and he can't possibly be happy with some of the performances he's seen from his Villa team. Some of the results have been okay, but I mean, I don't think they're anywhere near where they want to be. If Villa want to be kind of doing what West Ham are trying to do, and challenge for the Europa League or get a serious cup run going, you watch the intensity that West Ham play with. I mean, it's a joy to watch, and the way David Moyes has those guys working in unison, and the intensity that they have. Villa are kind of the opposite. So I think Gerrard will have recognised that, and he needs to set about fixing that over the summer. And they definitely need to come out and have a good start next year. Otherwise, he will be under pressure, because those fans, they won't care much for Gerrard's reputation if they don't start the season. They're not challenging the top half.
Well, they're also going to spend money. You know that they have money as well. Just in that situation, you've played teams. You were obviously famously involved in that night at Sellers Park against Liverpool. You started the comeback, Damien. And what's it like when you're playing a team that you know is going for the title? So Villa go to the Etihad. Like, as you said, the season is peter out. What does Gerrard say to them? Get one final kick out of them? Or are the Villa players thinking, it'd be great to actually spoil the party here? Or do they just turn up and think, we're like the subplot in this, really?
Sometimes you don't have a choice. You show up, and you can tell that the opposition are in full flow. They're ultra focused. You can feel it as soon as you arrive at the stadium that there's definitely a focus around that team. You see them in the warm-up, you stand next to them in the tunnel, and you can see, like, oh my God, this lot are bang at it. So you have a go. Obviously you do, because you're professional, and you go, do you know what, we're going to have a go here. But I think after about 20 minutes, when you realise, Jesus, this lot are bang at it, you know what I mean, we're going to do well here today to get anything. And I suppose it'll all depend on what Manchester City are like. If Manchester City show up and are in that mood, then there's very little Villa can do. They can have a go, but I think once they realise that they haven't got much of a chance, which will be probably very early in the game, especially if Man City score a couple of goals early, then it could just be a case of damage limitation. Our season's over. Let's just all go on holidays. We've stayed in the Premier League. But what Villa don't want to do is to turn into like an absolute rout. We start getting up. Remember, was it Man City lost the game at the back end of the season, the Middlesbrough 8-0? Was that one of the last days of the season? Yeah, I mean, that's when you have mentally checked out. But, you're part of an occasion. You're going. I remember we went to Chelsea once towards the end of the season, and they had to win to win the Premier League. And we went there and we put up a great fight, and Hazard scored a penalty late in the second half to win 1-0. But we enjoyed the occasion because there was no pressure on us. We just showed up and we were like, we were part of the story, and we had a go at it, and we found we were frustrating them. We were making life very, very difficult for them, and they got a questionable penalty in the end, but they went on and won it. But I think by by the time they went 1-0 up, they were really worried. They just didn't want to lose the game, so they kind of flipped into defensive mode. So it was quite a pleasant day for us. But again, I think Man City are going to be in full attack mode, and that'll be very, very difficult for anyone to stop, especially a team like Villa.
And what do you think, Colm? Pep ends with a Premier League title. Where does that rate as a season? Obviously, the Champions League slips away once again.
It's a good question because of the manager that it is. You can't, it's not a failure of a season if you win the Premier League. It's 38 games.
Yeah.
They're against one of the all-time great sides in Liverpool, and they've consistently, with the exception of 1 year, beaten them to the title. It's a brilliant season, but just because it's Pep Guardiola, and there's no secret that he's desperate to win another Champions League. Manchester City are. That's not the whole point of the project, but a big point of the project. And he hasn't won it without Messi. He hasn't won it since 2011. Of course, he wants to win it, but he will say in front of the cameras there on Sunday, if they beat Aston Villa like Damien's predicting, brilliant season, and you can't argue with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that game obviously, and all of them are at 4 o'clock, but Manchester City and Aston Villa, we've got live commentary on OTB Sunday. Stephen Doyle and Brian Kerr will be at the Etihad to keep you on top of that. Obviously, at the same time, Liverpool play Wolves. Damien, all Liverpool can do is do their job, try and see what kind of injury situation they have. There was obviously a few players missing against Southampton the other night. You have the Champions League final. I kind of feel, regardless of what happens at the Etihad, there will be a good atmosphere at Anfield because they have the Champions League final the following weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be a great atmosphere. They've already got 2 trophies in the bag. The fact that they could potentially lose the Premier League with 89, 90 points or whatever they could end up with is an incredible statistic. Anyone that gets to 90 points should go on and win a league, and I think they probably would have done nearly every other Premier League season, bar the last 4 or 5 years with these two going at it. But I think they've been a joy to watch both teams. It's been neck and neck, and they've been separated, or are going to be separated by the smallest of margins. But Liverpool have been well compensated with 2 trophies already in the bag and a showpiece Champions League final to look forward to next week. The fans will be in great mood, great spirit, because they have that game to look forward to. Yeah,
and what do you think, Colm, if, say, they beat Wolves, but obviously City win the league, and then Liverpool get beaten by Real Madrid, then they'd end up with 2 trophies, a Champions League final and bringing Manchester City to the final day, which, I mean, the fact that they're in the conversation for everything shows how good a team they are. But what do you think the feeling would be?
It was interesting because I thought you were going to say they win everything but the Premier League, but if not, if they're losing the Champions League final, it can't be a successful season for Liverpool, because they're much better than 2 domestic cups, because they're one of the all-time great sides. If they win the Champions League against Real Madrid, which I think they will, funnily enough, it's the opposite situation to Man City. I think Liverpool would possibly give up another European Cup for another Premier League. You have to remember that the one Premier League title they've won since the start in 1992 was the 1 year where there were no fans. So they really want to celebrate in front of fans, and they, I'm not going to say they haven't done it properly yet, but they haven't been able to celebrate with fans. And I think they would swap another European Cup because they have such an illustrious history in that competition. What Man City wouldn't give to have Liverpool's European Cup history, and what Liverpool wouldn't do to have Man City's recent modern history in the Premier League. And that's the fascination about this rivalry.
Jeez, lads, you set a high bar for success there.
That's what we do here, Damien. That's what we do.
We're sitting here having a cup of tea and we're questioning whether Man City have had a good season if they win the Premier League. Of course they've had an outrageous season. And we're questioning if Liverpool lose a Champions League and 2 domestic cups. I mean, they've had a brilliant season. They've got all the way to the Champions League final. They've had great moments along the way. They're going to lose a Premier League by a point. Perhaps, lose a Champions League very, very closely. If they do go on and lose it, I think they'll go on and win it personally. And they've won 2 domestic trophies, and we're sitting there questioning. But no, it is an underachievement if this brilliant Liverpool squad don't win the Premier League or the Champions League, just because of how good they are and how brilliant their manager is. Yeah, but surely it is.
I think they come back next season, though. I think it's important that they've gone to the final day to basically, and they did this a few seasons ago when they brought City to the final day, and City won it. But then the next season, Liverpool were out of the blocks quicker, and nobody caught them. The only thing that, obviously, the season was interrupted and it put things on hold, but it's important to put the pressure on City to basically say, we are not going away. Klopp has signed his new contract. You can imagine Liverpool are going to sign 1 or 2 players.
You'd strengthen the midfield, would you?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of talk about another midfielder coming in, but they don't need to do they don't have to go for these, let's win the transfer window by signing some Like Liverpool sign really good players and they make them even better. So what they're doing is working. But I still think whatever happens on Sunday, the atmosphere will be electric at Anfield, and the players will get their send off, and then it'll be right. See you in Paris next week and give Real Madrid a crack.
It'll be just like in the last day of the 2018-19 season, where Liverpool also played Wolves and Man City also won the league by a point.
Yeah.
But that's how close they are every single time. But you're talking about the two greatest Premier League sides that have ever been, like ahead of Manchester United sides, and that's as a United fan.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, that's for another day, because I think we need a lot more time. Let's talk about the other things on the line on Sunday. Arsenal are playing Everton. Obviously, that Everton game looked a lot trickier at half-time last night, but they're safe now. Arsenal need to beat Everton and hope that Norwich do them a favour. Norwich ain't doing Arsenal a favour, are they, Damien?
You're not in a good spot if you're hoping for Norwich to do you a favour, if you've left to get to that. I mean, the damage was done a number of weeks ago. I think there was 4 or 5 points clear with a game in hand. Absolute pole position to get it over the line, and they just wilted. The pressure came on, and in fairness to Spurs, they got a couple of results. The North London derby was obviously hugely important, but I think psychologically that inflicted a huge blow on Arsenal, and they just haven't been able to recover. So it looks like Arsenal, well, it doesn't look like, I'm pretty sure that Arsenal end up finishing fifth. And Tottenham will get that 4th place. And I'm delighted, because I'm so happy for Antonio Conte. I mean, I think Manchester United absolutely missed a boat there when he was going spare. If you're looking for a guy to drag a club into the conversation again, that's what he does. Whether you like his methods or his combative nature, doesn't matter. That guy gets it done, and looks like he's going to get it done with Tottenham. And I hope to God that Tottenham now get out of his way and just give him everything that he needs. But I know that the director of football there obviously was hugely influential in getting Conte to Tottenham. Perhaps that could be the link between the manager and Daniel Levy that has been missing. And as I said, I hope Tottenham just give him everything he wants, anything he wants, and just get out of his way, because that guy will drag Tottenham into the talking point when it comes to trophies and challenging up the top of the Premier League and perhaps getting good runs in the Champions League.
Yeah, I can imagine Conte and Paratici sharing a glass of wine on Sunday, and Conte's basically using the salt shakers to pick his team for next season of his new additions. Harry Kane, it looks like, could be part of that. In terms of Arsenal then, nobody was picking Arsenal to finish 5th or even be challenging for 4th at the start of the season. But because of the way things have panned out now, people are questioning Mikel Arteta. He signed the new contract. Arteta, I always feel, is one of those managers, and Damien alluded to it with basically all Premier League managers, you really are just a couple of bad results away from the narrative completely flipping, where lost his first 3 games of the season, everyone thought, will he even see out the first couple of months, turns it around, almost sneaks in to the top 4 because their rivals have taken their eye off the ball, but Spurs have rallied and Arsenal are going to miss out. But it doesn't mean that Arteta's doing a bad job.
100% not. I mean, we'll see what Damien thinks about it, but we were saying there, Phil, yourself and myself, before we went on air, it was, if Arsenal had spread out this poor form throughout the season, so say they had this mini poor run in like November, December, and then they switched, that run to this time of the season, I think people would say, look, he's made serious progress. They didn't get Europe this year, now they're in the Europa League, and then hopefully the following year they'll get the Champions League. It's just the capitulation at the end of the season falls into the Arsenal narrative that's basically 2006 in that Champions League final defeat that they've always flattered to deceive when it really comes to it. That would be the narrative, maybe not the reality. I think Mikel Arteta is doing a really good job at Arsenal. I don't know what you think, Damien.
Yeah, I think he's doing an okay job.
Really?
I think it would have been really good if he could have got top 4 over the line. It would have really, because that club is still, I believe, in disarray. There's a lot of fans there are still really upset because obviously they used to be the kingpins and now they're not even also Rans, and they've had so many years in the doldrums. And they got the brand new stadium, and Arsenal have the brand name, I suppose, but they just can't seem to get back to where they think they should be. And I think Arteta's suffering from that. I think he's doing a reasonably good job. Again, no manager should be just given a carte blanche 3 years, go on and do what you need to do. You need to have mile markers along the way. He has won a couple of trophies, and he has got Arsenal from 2 8th place finishes up to 5th. So we're going to use that dreaded word of progress again. It is progress. But again, the start of next year is going to be huge for him. I think a lot of fans, I feel anyway, would stick with him But he's got to be given a certain amount of games next year, and you need to see mile markers of the progress for Arsenal. And perhaps by November next year, they'll be a little bit more stronger mentally after what they went through this year. Hopefully he'll get to add a couple of players to his squad. And he just keeps building, but it's going to be a slow process because Arsenal were left in disarray for so long that unless you write a cheque for £1 billion, you're not really going to get them back competing with the big lads. So Arteta's got to do it the hard way and do it inch by inch. And firing him now would be catastrophic in my opinion.
Yeah, well, look, before we go, because we're running out of time, I have to mention the relegation scrap. We touched on the fact that Burnley played Villa last night. So Burnley home to Newcastle, Leeds away to Brentford. Leeds have to better Burnley's result. Who's going down, Damien?
I think Leeds are. The only saving grace is I think that Newcastle are probably the one team in English football that nobody wants to play right now because of the groundswell of optimism that's at that place. But I'm hoping that the Newcastle fans show up in party mode and Burnley have the minerals to get it done. They can be dogged, dig in, get a draw. Because I don't even fancy Leeds to go to Brentford and get anything, to be honest with you. That's not an easy trip, as many teams have found out this year. Brentford are a decent side, and I think that they can get a result against Leeds. So unfortunately, I think possession is 9/10 of the law, and unfortunately Burnley unfortunately for Leeds, Burnley are out of the relegation zone, and I think it'll stay that way.
And if they go down Leeds, does Jesse Marsch stay on?
I'd say not. No, to be honest with you, I think it's tough to come back from that. I think even a lot of the Leeds fans at the moment are obviously in love with Bielsa, and maybe some of them would have accepted him if he managed to get the job done. But I don't think that they've ever truly accepted him because the results have never been good enough.
Would Bielsa go back if they go back down to the Championship?
Honestly, you can never rule it out with Bielsa. But unfortunately for Bielsa though, all those goals they conceded could come back to bite them. Now the 7-0s, the 5s, the 6s.
Yeah, they have an outrageous
goal difference is so bad. So, look, that's it. That's pretty much us out of time. The final weekend of the season, still plenty to play for, and it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. Who's going to be lifting that title? Damien Delaney, thanks as always. Colm, thanks a million.
Lads.
Cheers, lads.
Enjoy the football, and we'll chat to you again next week. Thanks. Goodbye.
The football kick-off.
With Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.